Single mom rescues drowning billionaire at 3 a.m. But what happens next will haunt you forever. The moon hung heavy in a cloud-streaked sky, casting an eerie silver glow over the waves that crashed violently against the deserted beach. Sarah's heart raced as she sprinted towards the water, her breath coming in sharp gasps. It was way past midnight, yet the chilling cries for help pulled her like a magnet. With every step, the salt in the air clawed at her throat, but desperate determination pushed her forward. The ocean roared louder, as if protesting a betrayal. And then she saw him. A figure flailing against the darkness, arms thrashing, desperate and panicked. Who would be out here at this hour? In that moment, every horror trope she'd ever imagined came flooding to her mind. The moonlight illuminated his contours, revealing a soaking wet suit that clung to his body like a second skin. "Help! I can't swim!" he gasped, his voice a strangled mix of fear and disbelief. She hesitated only for a moment. Who was this man, and why did he look like a fallen angel, drowning in a sea of bad decisions? With a fierce resolve, Sarah dove into the icy grip of the waves. The water swallowed her whole, yanking her under with a dizzying force. Her lungs screamed for air, but she broke through, her eyes locking onto his. They exchanged a look that said everything: stranger, savior, trembling helplessness. It was as if time had frozen, a stark reality pressed against their chests as she closed the distance between them. Just as his fingers brushed against her, ready to grasp safety, a sharp gasp echoed through the night. Something was behind them. Something dark and unfathomable. The instant tension escalated, every second feeling like an eternity. Her instincts screamed to flee, yet something held her there. The man let out a strangled cry as a shadowy silhouette loomed closer, but before she could register any thought, Sarah pulled him closer, their bodies colliding as she fought against the pull of the water. Together, they clawed at the shore, gasping for breath, adrenaline coursing through them like wildfire. But as they collapsed onto the sand, shivering and wide-eyed, the moon dipped behind a thick cloud, plunging the beach into darkness. In that chilling silence, the gravity of the moment settled in. Who was this man she had saved? What was he running from? And why did the air feel thick with the promise of something sinister? There has to be more, there has to be a reason. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But just as the whispers of the ocean returned, a chilling realization washed over Sarah. Pebbles crunched behind them. There was someone else. Eyes wide, a lump forming in her throat, she turned. What awaited them in the shadows? The chill cut deeper than the ocean waves, prickling every nerve in Sarah's body. She caught the terrifying whisper of footsteps crunching through gravel, a sound too close for comfort. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice quaking as she tried to mask her fear. The millionaire, still breathing heavily beside her, shifted slightly, eyes darting wildly in the darkness. "Sarah," he breathed, his tone trembling. The sincerity in his voice somehow compounded the bewilderment she felt. They were both out of their depths now, trapped by more than just the ocean. The crunching grew louder, and the shadow took form stark and menacing. A tall figure emerged, clad in a long trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. The moonlight flickered briefly over him. She couldn't shake the sense this man was not just lost, but hunting. "Keep your distance," she yelled, her heart racing. It was raw, primal. She kept the billionaire close, mustering every ounce of protection she could offer a protector, a mother, but also just a scared woman clutching to a stranger in the dark. "Oh, I'm not here to hurt you," the figure drawled, his voice smooth and unsettling. "Just a concerned citizen, you know." Saw you two playing in the tide, thought I'd lend a hand. Lend a hand? She shot back, incredulous. What do you want? With every word, she felt the air grow heavier, as if it was being sucked out from her lungs. The man stepped closer, the glint of something metallic flashing beneath the dim light. A knife? Panic gripped her throat, thoughts racing through her mind. You two don't realize how dangerous it is out here, he continued, his tone now laced with a sinister undertone. Especially at this hour, especially for someone like him. He pointed directly at the billionaire, eyes narrowing with a hungry intensity. Stay away from him. Sarah yelled, pulling the man protectively against her. Her mind raced. She didn't know who this man was, but instincts told her he was trouble, the kind she had only seen in nightmares. Why save him? The stranger asked, eyes narrowing under the brim of his hat. What are you protecting? Do you even know who you've got there? A flash of anger laced through her panic. Enough. I'm not afraid of you. Her voice shook, but she fought to keep it steady. The man laughed, throwing his head back. Oh, but you should be. You're tangled up in something much bigger than you can imagine. Saving drowning billionaires at odd hours. Have you thought about the consequences? We won't be part of your plans, the billionaire suddenly said, his voice low yet determined, breaking the tense moment. The stranger stepped back, a grin spreading maliciously underneath the shadow of his hat. Oh, I believe you will be. You're just beginning to scratch the surface. And just like that, he turned on his heel and melted back into the darkness, footsteps fading like a nightmare retreating at dawn. This silence was deafening, leaving Sarah and the man alone, trembling together in confusion. But the danger still hung in the air, like a storm about to break. Was this just the beginning? What plans were lurking in the shadows? Who was that? She whispered, eyes wide, searching his face for answers. I don't know, he stammered, shaking visibly. But as their eyes locked, she could see the fear and something else, a flicker of recognition, but before Sarah could ask more, before the weight of it all could fully settle, a distant siren shouted across the beach, the sound slicing through the tension with chilling clarity. Sarah, he said, drawing closer. We need to leave. Now. And in that moment, she realized, she hadn't just saved a man from drowning. They'd both just plunged into something far darker. The ocean wasn't the only thing they needed to escape. What lay ahead would force her to make choices she never intended to face, secrets waiting to unravel. Could she trust him? Or would the water rise again, taking them with it? As they stumbled away from the shore, the siren's wail intensified, echoing ominously through the darkness. Sarah's heart raced in time with the blaring sound, each pulse a ticking clock urging them to move faster. Holding tight to the billionaire Matthew, she recalled she felt the weight of their reality settle in. Where do we go? She gasped, glancing back to see if their shadowy pursuer would re-emerge. The gravel was uneven beneath their feet, threatening to trip them up at every step. Follow me. There's a cabin up the hill, he said, fear threading through his voice. It should be safe there. They dashed toward the faint silhouette of the cabin against the backdrop of the mountain. As they climbed, the trees closed in around them like a wild curtain. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, contrasting sharply with the chaos brewing inside her mind. How had this night spiraled so far out of control? The cabin came into sharper focus, a small, weathered structure that seemed to emerge like a ghost from the shadows. The door creaked open with a push, and they stumbled inside, huddled close. Matthew flicked a switch, and a single bulb flickered to life, casting eerie shadows across the walls. We can't stay here long, he warned, glancing around as if expecting their mysterious threat to follow. The tension gripped them both. I don't know who that man was, but he is not alone. Not alone. Sarah's voice quivered as she tried to process the unraveling situation. No, he replied, his jaw tightening. He is part of something, some serious danger connected to me. What do you mean? She asked, pulling away slightly, wrestling with trust and fear. Why would he target you? What have you gotten yourself into? Matthew took a deep breath, his shoulders drooping under the weight of secrets unspoken. I'm not who you think I am. There are powerful people who want to keep things hidden. Hidden? She stared at him, frustration mixing with worry. What does that even mean? This is insane. As if on cue, the cabin trembled slightly, and the faint sound of voices drifted through the thin walls. Her heart pounded as adrenaline surged again. Do you hear that? Matthew nodded, fear flickering in his eyes. They're getting closer. We've got to barricade the door. They hurried to push a rickety table against the entrance, desperate energy making them work quickly. The noise of laughter and whispered curses seeped into the room, sending chills rippling through both of them. What are they saying? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. I can't make it out, Matthew replied, fear carving lines into his face. But they sound pleased. Like they know something we don't. Sarah swallowed hard, heart racing with a mixture of dread and the weirdest sense of loyalty. She hadn't planned on being the hero tonight, yet here she was protecting a man she barely knew. A sudden crash jolted them, shaking the door as if someone had pounded against it. Don't let them in. She gasped, feeling a surge of fierce protectiveness. Sarah! He exclaimed, his eyes wide with urgency. Get ready to run. If they get through before he could finish, a loud bang echoed, and the door splintered under the impact. Fear wrapped around her throat tight, and without thinking, she grabbed the nearest object, a heavy iron candlestick. On 3, he said, as determination flared in his eyes. 1, 2, but just as he counted down to 3, the door flew open, and there they stood. Figures cloaked in darkness, faces half hidden, eyes gleaming with a madness that sent shivers down her spine. They're not just searching for him. They're hunting for answers that could doom them both. Run! Matthew shouted, and she didn't need to be told twice. In that moment, everything she thought she knew about her life shattered, and the chilling truth echoed through her mind. What she didn't know was the very thing that could cost them everything. As they bolted out of the cabin, the forest swallowed them whole. The chase was far from over, and shadows danced behind them. What waited in the darkness would test the bonds of trust, forcing Sarah to confront her own demons before the night claimed them both, but an unseen hand was already pulling the strings. They weren't just running from danger. They were running towards something even darker, a tangled web of secrets waiting to ensnare them. What would they uncover before dawn? Would they emerge unscathed, or would they find themselves lost in the depths of treachery and betrayal? Every breath felt like fire in Sarah's lungs as they tore through the underbrush, branches clawing at their skin. Matthew ran beside her, his eyes darting behind them, scanning for anything that would emerge from the darkness. The night air was thick with tension, every snap of a twig made her heart race faster. Where are we going? She shouted over the din, her voice barely a whisper above the wind. Just keep running. He urged, his mind clearly racing. They veered right, deeper into the woods. Matthew led the way, dodging trees with an agility that surprised her. Just moments ago, he'd been a man cornered by shadows. Now, he was like a wild animal, instinctively navigating the treacherous terrain. The siren's howls faded into the distance, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the heavy silence of the forest. It was disconcerting, too quiet, and her gut twisted with unease. Matthew, please, she pressed, desperation creeping into her voice. What are they after? He glanced back, his face flushed but determined. A secret, Sarah. One I didn't mean to uncover. It involves my family, wealth, power and danger. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. A wealthy family tangled in shadows? It was a tangled web, and she felt herself sinking deeper into the chaos. A sharp rustling pierced the stillness, echoing through the trees. Matthew instinctively halted, pulling her to a stop. Stay quiet, he whispered, his voice barely a breath. They stood frozen, hearts pounding as the sound grew nearer. It was like the forest itself was breathing, an ominous pulse swirling around them. Suddenly, figures emerged from between the trees, dark and menacing, moving with purpose. They were searching for them, a hunt that had just begun. Matthew's eyes widened in panic. "We need to hide." He grabbed her wrist, leading her behind a thick tree trunk. The bark scratched at her back as she pressed against it, her heart thundering with fear. "We can't let them find us," he murmured, glancing around nervously. Behind them, the figures were closing in, shadows shifting through moonlight. Sarah squinted, catching brief glimpses of dark clothing, their faces obscured by hoods and masks. They were organized, methodical. "What do they want?" she whispered, trembling at the reality of their danger. "I'm not sure." Matthew looked away, his jaw tightening. "But it's not just me they're after. It's about what I know and who I am." Silence settled over them once more. Every second felt like an eternity, and as the men moved away, she felt a flicker of hope. But the moment was short-lived. A voice called out from behind, breaking into her thoughts. "Keep searching. They can't be far." Her breath caught, and dread washed over her. They weren't just lost in the woods, they were trapped in a wild descent into peril. Matthew's grip on her hand tightened. "We need to move now." With newfound urgency, they slipped away from their hiding spot, careful to avoid any snap of a branch beneath their feet. As they made their way through the labyrinth of trees, Sarah's thoughts turned to the warning Matthew had shared. Secrets. Power. How deep did this rabbit hole go? Suddenly, a flash of metal caught her eye. The moonlight glinted off a knife wielded by one of their pursuers, glimmering sinisterly in the darkness. Her stomach dropped. "Matthew, they have weapons." she gasped. "I know," he replied grimly, sensing the rising stakes. "We have to trust each other, Sarah. No turning back." The underbrush rustled angrily, and she felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with dread. Were they truly prepared for what lay ahead? As they rounded a bend, an unexpected clearing opened up before them. But it wasn't just an escape, it was an isolated field with tremors of an ancient threat brewing beneath the surface. "What is this place?" Sarah gasped, taking in the sight. But before Matthew could respond, the shadows from the forest exploded into motion. They were here, and time was running out. Would they survive long enough to discover the truth? Or would the secrets entangle them in a web from which they couldn't escape? The air in the clearing felt charged, as if it were holding its breath in anticipation. Sarah's heart raced, outpacing her mind as she stood frozen, staring at the dark figures drawing closer. Matthew's body was rigid beside her, his eyes locked on the shadows that swarmed like a storm, angry and relentless. "Now!" he whispered urgently, gripping her hand tighter as they darted toward the tree line on the opposite side of the clearing. The shadows pulsed behind them, a tide of chaos that threatened to swallow them whole. Branches scratched their faces and arms as they plunged into the woods again. The darkness wrapped around them like a shroud, but with Matthew leading the way, it also felt almost familiar. Intense whispers of adrenaline coursed through Sarah's veins, she felt alive, every sense heightened. Yet fear gnawed at her gut, its icy fingers ready to pull her back into despair. "What do we do now?" she hissed, her breath rasping in her throat. Matthew paused, a look of determination washing over his face. "There's an old cabin nearby. My family used it for hunting trips. It's not far, but we need to be quiet. Just follow me." As they sprinted deeper into the woods, the sounds of pursuit faded, just enough for Sarah to gather her breath. But in that momentary calm, doubt crept back in. What kind of family was Matthew entangled with? What secrets lay buried in the shadows? Just as the cabin came into view, an eerie howl echoed through the trees, sending fresh chills down Sarah's spine. It was more than just the wind, it felt like a warning. "Quick!" Matthew urged, pushing her ahead as they sidled up to the dilapidated structure. The wood groaned under their weight as they nudged the door open. It swung on its hinges with a creak that sounded like a scream in the silence. Inside, the air was thick, laden with the smell of damp earth and decaying wood. The shadows danced around them as they frantically surveyed the small room. Matthew led her to a corner, shifting aside stacks of dusty canvas bags to reveal a small hatch beneath the floorboards. He knelt, prying it open, revealing a dank tunnel that snaked away into darkness. "Get in, now," he insisted, urgency laced through each word. Before she could comply, they heard voices erupt from the trees. The hunters were almost upon them, combing through the woods with terrifying efficiency. Panic twisted Sarah's insides. Were they too late? Matthew, her voice trembled, the gravity of their situation pressing heavily on her chest. "Please, Sarah. Trust me." Matthew pulled her down into the tunnel, his voice low, but fierce. "We have to go." He dropped down beside her, placing a hand over her mouth to muffle her panicked breaths. She felt the warmth of his body next to hers, a conflicting comfort amid their peril. As they lay in the cramped darkness, listening to the cacophony of approaching footsteps, Sarah's mind raced. Secrets, shadows, and now an underground escape. The stakes were rapidly escalating and she felt the weight of every choice begin to bear down on her. "Why is this happening?" she whispered, her heart pounding rapidly against her chest. "What do they want from you?" Before Matthew could answer, the sounds above grew distinct. The men were shouting now, voices sharp with frustration and urgency. "There. They went this way. Search every inch. They can't be far." Matthew's grip on her arm tightened, his eyes burning with a mix of fear and knowing desperation. "If they find us," he began, but a hollow truth hung in the air. If they found them, it could all be over. Suddenly, a sudden crash echoed from above, as if the cabin was unraveling around them. "Get ready, Sarah," he murmured, grave urgency in his voice, but before Sarah could process what was about to happen, a blinding light split the darkness, illuminating the passage. What secrets were buried in this cabin? What truth would they unearth if they made it through the night? And would they still be the same afterward? The sudden flood of light pushed Sarah's instincts into overdrive. It sliced through the heavy darkness like a sword, revealing damp walls and jagged edges of the tunnel they had just entered. Her heart beat fast, thrumming against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Matthew," she gasped, her voice shaking, "what is that light?" "I don't know," he whispered back, his brow furrowed in apprehension. They crawled deeper into the narrow passage, each move punctuated by the creaks and splinters of the cabin above. The distant shouting of the hunters twisted into a cacophony, embedding itself into her mind like a haunting melody. The warm glow intensified as they slithered further. Panic swirled with curiosity inside her. What if it's a trap? Matthew shook his head, his determination unshaken. "We need to find out. Stay close." The tunnel opened up into a small chamber. The light flickered against the stone like living fire. In the center stood an odd contraption, something that resembled a rusted machine, draped in shadows but deceptively inviting. Broken gears and frayed wires snaked from it, coiling around like a heart's lifeblood. The light pulsed softly, rhythmically, casting elongated shadows against the walls. "What is this place?" Sarah breathed, stepping cautiously forward, a magnetic pull urging her onward. Her intuition screamed for her to stay back, but the machine held an allure she couldn't ignore. "It belongs to my family," he said, looking uneasy. "We never used it, or talked about it. I thought it was just an old relic." But now her finger grazed the machine's surface, and a jolt of energy sparked through her. Her skin tingled, a rush of warmth flooding her veins. "Matthew!" she cried, spinning around. "Do you feel that?" Before he could respond, the chamber trembled. The very ground beneath them shuddered. Dust rained down from the walls, splattering onto the floor like fallen leaves. The soft pulse of light transformed into a blinding beam, bathing them in its brilliance. "What did we stumble into?" Matthew shouted over the deafening roar surrounding them, his voice strained with urgency. As the tremor subsided, a low, resonant hum filled the space, vibrating through Sarah's bones. She couldn't tell if it was fear or fascination that gripped her heart harder than ever. She reached out again, forcing herself closer to the light. Images flickered in her mind's eye, visions of people, faces shadowed in desperation, eyes rimmed with fear, and a looming threat that echoed through time. Matthew grabbed her arm, his face taut with dread, pulling her back just as a low groan echoed from the walls around them. "Sarah, we have to leave now." But before they could move, the machine whirred to life, gears grinding and metal clanging as though awakening from a long slumber. The chamber filled with a blinding light, and a fissure opened in the air, swirling with energy. It looked like an endless tunnel, twisting and turning, beckoning them forward. "Look!" Matthew pointed, shock etched across his face. "Do you see that?" "What is it?" She gasped, unable to tear her gaze away. Dark figures emerged from the depths of the glowing stream, their silhouettes sharp against the brightness. They bore the same sense of urgency and desire, their intentions unreadable, but their presence sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "Are they the ones hunting us?" she stammered, clutching Matthew's arm. "I don't know," he muttered, "but we can't stay here. We need to get out." As they moved to escape, the ground quaked again, and the chamber erupted with a deafening sound, causing dust and debris to rain down. War echoes trembled around them, drowning their breaths in fear. In that moment, Sarah faced a choice: stay and explore the terrifying unknown, or leap through the breach into whatever chaos awaited them on the other side. A pair of cold eyes locked onto hers from within the glow, offering an alluring promise cloaked in darkness. Caught between curiosity and dread, Sarah could barely breathe. What awaited them behind that shimmering veil? Would stepping through send them back to safety or deeper into the abyss? But a sudden roar echoed from behind, snapping her from hesitation. "Run!" Matthew shouted, and before she had time to think, they plunged into the blinding light. What awaited them in the realm beyond? Would their choices ignite a new nightmare or grant them a fragile hope? As they tumbled into the light, time stretched and warped. Sarah felt as if she were both rushing forward and standing still, a dizzying sensation that left her breathless. The blinding glow surrounded them, cocooning them in an embrace that was both frightening and exhilarating. Suddenly, the intensity shifted. The light dimmed, and her feet struck solid ground. They landed in another chamber, but this was decidedly different. The ancient stonework here was vibrant with strange symbols that danced and flickered, illuminated by a source they couldn't identify. The air hung thick with tension, a silent scream echoing in the distance, woven into the very fabric of this unsettling space. "Where are we?" Matthew's voice trembled, betraying the bravado he'd shown moments before. I don't know," Sarah admitted, her heart hammering violently against her chest. She squinted into the depths of the chamber, trying to distinguish the shapes that moved in the shadows. The dark figures from earlier were gone, but an unsettling presence lingered, like the feeling of being watched. Before she could voice her fears, the air shifted. A door, seemingly carved from the solid rock, revealed itself. It swung open with an eerie creak, exhaling a gust of stale, musty air that felt alive and grasping. "Do we really want to go in there?" Sarah hesitated, her instinct screaming for caution. Matthew took a deep breath. "What choice do we have? The hunters are still after us. We can't go back." His determination flickered an ember of courage in her chest. Taking his hand, they stepped forward, bracing for the unknown. Inside was a narrow corridor that pulsed with energy, walls adorned with more symbols. The air crackled, reminding Sarah of storms before they unleashed their fury. She could feel it building, a sense of urgency prickling against her skin. "What if it's a trap?" she whispered, anxiety knotting her stomach. "No turning back now," Matthew replied, his eyes narrowing with resolve. They moved through the corridor, each step echoing ominously thanks to the oppressive silence that wrapped around them like a shroud. Then, a voice sounded soft, melodic, and disembodied. "You seek answers, but answers have a price. Who are you?" Sarah called out, her voice shaky, but demanding respect. Only silence greeted her. But then the walls around them began to shimmer, the symbols glowing brighter in response to their presence. An image materialized before them, flickering like a candle in the wind. It was a tall figure, draped in shadows. An air of authority enveloped it, but the subtle pain behind its eyes was unmistakable. "Fate entangles us," it said, voice echoing hollowly. "Knowledge of the past beckons, but in return, your most treasured secret must be revealed." "What are you talking about?" Matthew said, stepping forward to shield Sarah. "What past? What secret?" The figure remained still, its gaze penetrating as it locked onto Sarah. "Fear binds you. A choice made in your past will determine the course of your future." Tension surged through her. Shadows flickered around them, dancing like flames. What choice? What could this being know? "Sarah," Matthew urged, concern threading through his voice. "Let us just leave. We don't need to entertain this." She felt a weight pressing upon her, truth swirling just out of reach. "No," she said, voice firm, even as her heart raced. "If there's a chance this can help us, we have to listen." "Then choose wisely," the figure replied. "And be prepared to bare your soul." Then, in an instant, visions flooded Sarah's mind. Faces of loved ones, choices that echoed through time, the burden she carried alone. The light thrummed wildly, and she staggered back, overwhelmed. Would revealing her past free her or entrap her forever? Before she could respond, the corridor rumbled with an earthquake-like force. The figure's form began to dissipate, swallowed by an encroaching darkness. "Make your choice," it warned, voice turning desperate. With the illusion of safety fading, Sarah knew time was slipping through her fingers. What was the choice she made? What secret did she hold that could unravel their fate forever? Before she could sort through the chaos of her thoughts, a sound echoed from the depths, a growl that rattled her bones. "Matthew, we need to go now." As they turned to escape, she felt the air thicken again. A decision loomed behind her, an urgency pressing down, ready to shatter everything she thought she knew. Ahead lay danger, but so did the truth. Would they find answers or a reckoning? This time, their lives depended on her choice, and she was running out of time. The growl echoed again, a deep, guttural sound that sent chills racing through Sarah and Matthew's veins. They sprinted forward, the corridor closing in around them as the shadows twisted and contorted like angry wraiths. The walls seemed to pulse with their fear, reverberating with each frantic footfall. "Where do we go?" Matthew yelled, his voice tearing through the suffocating silence. Shadows writhed like tendrils, reaching for them, urging them to stay back. I don't know." Sarah gasped, desperation flooding her mind. "We just have to get out." The darkness loomed behind them, its breath was a cold whisper that curled around their necks, pulling them backward. With her heart pounding against her ribs, Sarah's eyes searched for an exit. At the far end, a flicker of light beckoned, a doorway carved from the very stone around them. "I see it," she cried, hope igniting in her chest. The shimmering light felt like a promise, but promises often came with prices. They bolted towards it, their footsteps echoing louder as they crossed a threshold, rushing headlong into what felt like a dream or a nightmare. The other side was an expansive chamber, unlike anything they'd encountered. Vast and filled with swirling mists and shadows, the air felt alive, crackling with energy that swirled like a tempest. "What is this place?" Matthew whispered, awe and fear colliding in his eyes. "I don't know, but we can't stay here." Sarah's voice was edged with panic as she glanced over her shoulder. The darkness crawled closer, hungry for their fear. As they darted further into the chamber, the flickering symbols began to coalesce, forming twisted faces that seemed to watch their every move. The air thickened with dread as a sudden gust blasted through, carrying whispers, unintelligible and haunting. "Do you hear that?" Matthew's eyes widened in sheer terror. The whispers swelled like a storm, a chorus that echoed their deepest fears and regrets. Suddenly, one of the faces in the mist emerged, pulling itself free from the swirling shadows. Its features were grotesque, eyes like hollow voids. "You seek the truth," it rasped, its voice a chilling whisper that sent ice racing through Sarah's heart. "But truths come at a cost, no more costs." Matthew growled, stepping protectively in front of Sarah. But somewhere in her heart, she knew they couldn't escape without understanding what had brought them here. This was a place of choices, and they had to face whatever lay ahead. The apparition shifted closer, smirking, as if savoring the fear emanating from both of them. Its elongated fingers pointed directly at Sarah. "What secret do you guard? What truth shackles you?" A tremor coursed through her, and in that moment, Sarah felt herself teetering on the edge. "Leave us alone," she shouted, but her voice wavered. "Choice, or annihilation," the creature intoned, its voice resonating with chilling finality. "Reveal your secret, child, or be consumed by the shadows." Staring into its abyss-like eyes, Sarah felt a pulse of heat spreading through her, almost like the sun breaking through a storm. Memories flooded her mind, the laughter of her children, the weight of expectations, her past choices. Each moment flickered like the symbols on the walls, and suddenly, she understood, there was power in truth, but vulnerabilities came with it. She took a step forward, forcing her voice to steady. "I choose." Before she could finish, a bone-chilling howl erupted from the darkness, and the air around them twisted violently. The ground shook beneath their feet as a surge of energy rocketed through the chamber, sending shadows spiraling. "Matthew!" she screamed, reaching for him as everything began to crumble around them. The creature's grin widened, pulling back into the mist. "Your choice will cost you dearly." As the walls began to collapse, and sharp shards of stone rained down like deadly arrows, Sarah was left with one staggering realization: would revealing her secret save them, or would it seal their fate in darkness? In that swirling chaos, time slowed. The end loomed, but all she could think about was what waited behind her choice, and then she understood, her secret was more powerful than she ever realized. The question hung in the air as the chamber rumbled around them: was she finally ready to face it, or was the darkness about to consume everything she loved? The ground cracked open beneath them, the very stone trembling in protest, and Sarah's heart raced as dust and fragments rained down. The whispers intensified, weaving into a chaotic symphony of dread. She could barely hear herself think through the deafening roar of the collapsing chamber, each sound punctuated by the crushing weight of her choices. "Hold on!" Matthew shouted, pulling her closer as the shadows thrashed around them, trying to ensnare their ankles. They stumbled, barely keeping their balance against the violent surge of energy. "What do we do?" Sarah fought to get the words out. "We can't get to the light." His voice cut through the chaos as he gestured toward the flickering glow at the chamber's heart. It danced like a beacon, yet uncertainty gnawed at her insides. But what if? She hesitated, her secret bubbling just beneath the surface, threatening to spill. The creature's words echoed in her mind: the truth comes at a cost. What if her truth was the very thing that brought ruin upon them? No time for hesitation. With a swift nod, they tore across the chamber, dodging falling stone and grasps of shadow. Just as they neared the radiant edge, a violent gust slammed into them, sending Sarah hurtling to the ground. She barely caught herself, the stone cold and unforgiving beneath her palms. "Sarah!" Matthew's cry pierced her fog of panic, and she looked up to see him extend a hand, his face a mask of worry. "I'm coming." She struggled to her feet, a sudden surge of adrenaline fueling her. Just as she reached for him, a shadow lunged from behind. A tendril of darkness coiled around her leg, icy fingers gripping her tightly. "Matthew! Help!" The words tore through her, fear clawing at her throat. He raced forward, but as he reached her side, the malevolent force dragged her back, forcing her to the ground. Desperation melded with determination, and in a searing moment fueled by sheer will, Sarah gripped the edge of her secret. "I am here!" she cried, her voice rising above the howls of wind and shadow. In that moment of vulnerability, an unexpected calm washed over her. She faced the darkness, her heart pounding but steady. If revealing my truth is the only way to save us, then so be it. The tendril slackened for just a heartbeat, and with that pulse of freedom, Sarah yanked herself free and lunged towards Matthew. Together they collided, falling into the sheer light streaming from the center. As they tumbled onward, engulfed in the brilliant glow, time seemed to stretch, hanging between worlds. The spectral faces pressed against the light's edge, their expressions shifting from hunger to fury as Sarah's decision materialized. "What the hell did you just do?" Matthew panted, breathless, his eyes wide. I chose truth," Sarah managed to say, but she felt the weight of every moment pressing down on her. But every truth has a cost. The light engulfed them, and for a brief instant, it was as if all the fear and shadow were banished. But that moment cracked open like a fragile egg, spilling forth what lay just beyond the veil of illumination. Suddenly, figures emerged, faces she thought she had forgotten, eyes that sparkled with memories both cherished and painful. "What? Who are they?" Matthew's voice trembled, and she could sense the rising chaos threatening to swallow them again. "It's the past," she whispered, her heart racing faster. "They're the ones I lost, the ones I never let go." "What is happening?" Matthew's fear turned to confusion as the world around them faded into a fusion of light and shadow, but before Sarah could grasp the magnitude of what was unfolding, a sharp crack split the air, as if the fabric of reality had shattered. Noticeable in a heartbeat, the figures began to swirl, the light dimming and the overwhelming sense of dread returning. "No!" she shouted, grabbing Matthew's arm. "We have to face them. I can't let them drag me down." "Face what?" Matthew yelled back, desperation creeping into his tone. "The truth of my past." Sarah's voice faltered, barely above a whisper, as the memories locked in pristine clarity swelled around her. "But what if it's more than I can bear?" Before she could confront the phantoms of her past, the shadows roared back to life, tugging at the edges of their sanctuary. The chamber transformed as tendrils of darkness entwined with the figures of her former life. "Stand firm, Sarah. We have to fight." Matthew's voice pushed through her fear, and just as a claw of shadow reached out, aimed straight for her heart, she felt a flicker of hope surge within her. Would she stand firm against the darkness, or would her past claim her once and for all? The air shifted violently, the shadows swirling with terrible intent as she braced herself for the truth that awaited. This wasn't over yet. The real battle was only just beginning. The light flickered ominously, casting erratic shadows that danced as if eager to consume the truth. Sarah's heart pounded, every beat a constant reminder of what hung in the balance. She felt Matthew's hand squeeze hers, a tether grounding her amid the chaos. "We can do this," he murmured, the determination in his voice warming her spirit. As the guardians of her past swirled closer, their faces blurred between the anguish of lost opportunities and the warmth of love that had once surrounded her. Each ghost exuded a story dripping with regret, each a fragment of her life she had buried deep, refusing to acknowledge. They whispered her name, a haunting chorus that echoed through her being. They weren't merely shadows, they were pieces of her, waiting for recognition, a reunion of selves wound tightly in her heart. "Focus," Matthew urged, his voice cutting through the murky confusion. "You know what you have to do." With every ounce of strength, Sarah stepped toward them, her breath coming quicker as a wave of nostalgia rushed past. "I'm not afraid," she declared, meeting the many eyes that studied her with a blend of expectation and sorrow. "I'm ready to confront what has been haunting me." There was silence, a moment where time paused. The shadows halted, their movements wavering as they conceded to her resolve. The light fused with their darkness, curling around her and wrapping her in a cocoon of light and warmth. A bright ribbon unraveled, connecting Sarah with her memories. "I lost you," she began, her voice steadying. "I lost you all, but I'm here now. I won't turn away anymore. I'll carry our love and our pain." Her chest tightened, truth surging through the air like a shockwave. "You shaped me, but you don't control me." The figures stirred, their ghostly forms shifting closer, the air thickening. As she faced her past, it merged with the tendrils of darkness, forging a path she never thought possible. With each acknowledgement, they began to dissolve, their silhouettes entwined with light, their essence merging into the very fabric of her being. "Sarah," Matthew whispered, awe threaded through his voice. She turned to him, surprised by the calming power she felt radiating from her core. It was as if she had unlocked something profound within her, an understanding that these shadows did not define her, they were merely chapters in a bigger story waiting to unfold. As the phantom figures melted away, a crack resonated through the ground beneath them. "The portal," Matthew exclaimed, pointing toward the swirling light behind them, brighter and more inviting than before. "It's opening. Let us go," Sarah shouted, taking his hand as adrenaline fueled their escape. They raced toward the ever-brightening portal, arms outstretched in the face of a final climax. The air buzzed with anticipation, pulling them forward as the darkness peeled away. In an explosion of radiance, they burst through. Gasping for breath, Sarah stumbled onto solid ground, soft sand beneath her drenched in moonlight once again. The night felt heavy and still, yet there was something new, something hopeful wrapped around them. The world was alive, filled with promise. They looked at each other, shock and relief swimming in their eyes. "It's over," Matthew murmured, disbelief coloring his words. Sarah nodded, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "Maybe this is the fresh start we both needed." The waves rolled gently, their rhythm a soothing reminder of their survival. This night had tested them beyond anything she could have imagined, unveiling more than just the darkness of others. It revealed her own light, a light that could shine, even amid shadows. "Thank you for trusting me," Matthew said, taking a step closer. "For fighting beside me." She smiled, a rush of warmth filling her chest. "You were never just a stranger, you were a reminder of strength, of hope." As they stood there, the weight of the night lifted, allowing the promise of a new day to dawn. Hand in hand, they turned from the ocean, ready to embrace whatever life had in store for them next. But even in this moment of peace, remnants of the interaction with the shadows lingered in the air as an echo of their struggles. It was a reminder that shadows exist, but they have no power once faced. As they walked away, Sarah felt lighter, unburdened by the years of silence. There would still be challenges, no doubt, but she was not alone anymore. They would face the future together, and then it hit her. Life always held flashes of darkness, but those only shone brighter when met with courage. "Let us move forward," she said, determination coating her voice. Together. They walked into the horizon, the night still holding its breath, but for the first time, Sarah felt free. And that's where it ended. Their journey through darkness led them to this moment of peace, ready to embrace the unpredictable light of tomorrow. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss any of the exclusive stories we have in store for you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. I want to see your thoughts in the comments. Flood the section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see it. This is the moment to show your support.